girl group, the Spice Girls. Oh, you're familiar with her work. As Ginger Spice, Hollowell Horner played a formative role in the band as they became one of the biggest selling girl groups of all time. She is the successful author of the Eugenia Lavender series and the autobiography, If Only, which I've seen a number of copies running around here tonight. She continues to work with the Royal Commonwealth to promote prospects through literacy to Commonwealth citizens, and is to be awarded an honorary doctorate of letters for Sheffield Hallam University this autumn. She's an outspoken supporter of animals, a patron of the London Zoo, your friend and mine, Geri Hollowell Horner.
Quite a turnout.
It's lovely, so nice, so welcoming. Thank you so much.
Can you guys all hear us?
No.
Okay, is that better? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Check. I was turned on.
I should know better.
So, guys, what? So I had the honor of spending the afternoon with Geri at a school here in town, and it was so wonderful just hearing you talk about your book and seeing the way that these kids, it resonated with them and the way you were able to connect with them over this story. So it's my honor to be with you here tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Rosie Frost. We're going to talk a little bit about you, and we have some audience questions, I believe, already pulled, so we'll get to those at the end. To start, do you want to tell everyone what the book is about and kind of where it came from, what inspired it?
I think the book is actually about us. It's about who we are right now. I think the world needs a new hero. I think someone ordinary, that's a hero. That's someone that finds the courage they never knew they had. And it's not airbrushed, that, has struggles, and someone who's sometimes scared and vulnerable, but, has the courage to show off anyway. And this book is for anyone, really. No matter, where you're from, what age you are. I think it's ageless and timeless for me, that's my intention. I'm trying to reflect back to what I feel that I think we all feel right now. So that was kind of my beginning. I always like a good character that you root for, maybe the underdog a little bit. So I think we can all feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, an underdog and also a bit of an outsider. She shows up at this school. Her mother has, at the very beginning of the book, her mother has passed away. Her entire life is sort of uprooted, and she finds herself in this on this island at this school, and she doesn't know anyone. And a few people, including a few teachers, are a bit cruel to her. And to talk a bit about the outsider story and sort of how you were able to kind of imbue the character with that, and how it affected Rosie's experience.
I think I've learned, to write about what you know, and I think each of us in different ways can always feel like, I think it's our human condition, we want to fit in. It doesn't matter where, from this side of the pond or that side of the pond, wherever we are, we all want to feel that we belong. And with Rosie, her mother has passed away, and my dad died when I was younger, and I just felt this feeling of, I felt quite uncomfortable. And the first thing I wanted just to, sort of embed it in her and don't airbrush it, is that she feels she's grieving, but she doesn't know what to do with it, right? And that feels like a modern day hero, because sometimes you do get there are a lot of orphan characters out there, but Rosie's different. This time you feel her on the inside. That's there. And then I would say, the backdrop are two things. One is Bloodstone Island, and bloodstone is a real mineral that does exist. And Bloodstone Island, imagine a Jurassic Park, but instead of dinosaurs, you've got endangered animals. And all the endangered animals that are mentioned are real. There are so many. Anyway, and this school that is based there was, and I don't know if any of you know much about history, so Henry VIII, this is 500 years ago, right? And the story is set now, but 500 years ago, Henry VIII, he wasn't very nice. And he had 6 wives. The second one was probably the most contentious, the most famous one, Anne Boleyn. And she's really smart. And people around her and him wanted to get rid of her. And so he had her executed. And she just had a miscarriage. It was really horrible. But she left behind a 3-year-old little girl. That 3-year-old little girl, she grew up to be the finest monarch of her time. And so can you imagine if your dad chopped your mother's head off, you probably don't want to get married. Right, trauma? Anyway, so when the time comes for her to be queen, she said, there's pressure for her to have, to produce an heir. She says, you know what? I'm going to build a school. I'm going to build a school for my mother. And the pupils, their ideas, that will be my legacy. So it really tributes to her mother, Anne Boleyn. So in this story, this school has all those values of her. It's like her redemption. And Rosie, 500 years later, is sent to that school, and she doesn't know why.
Yeah, and so much of the book is rooted. I mean, you don't spend. I mean, it reads like a wonderfully fast-paced adventure story. It doesn't read like a history textbook. But you open with a prologue that's set with historical characters and a historical context. So I found that very effective. So I guess my question is, talk about the ways that history and including embedding history in your story actually informs the fiction.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the first prologue I've ever written. My editor, I didn't really understand the value of it. What I've learned is what we're experiencing now, what's just gone before us, everything is prologue. Everything is copy. The people that hurt you, the ones that left you reeling, or the good, the bad, the ugly, everything is prologue. We bounce from it. And so I just put that in there, so it transports you back to that moment where Queen Elizabeth I, she's in her 20s and it's like, this is her redemption for her mother. So then it bounces you back, forward, it bounces you forward into the future. And you sort of understand the reasoning behind it. But you're right, it is an absolute action-packed, fast-paced adventure. It's quite aggressive in parts. Everyone, even my husband read it, and he doesn't read books. Yeah.
So before we move on from history, I actually have a question that includes a quote, so I want to pull this out real quick.
Yeah.
I didn't hit you with this one earlier, so this is a new one. So Rosie has an early refrain where she says, quote, "Say nothing, do nothing, silence is your shield." Queen Elizabeth I famously said video et taceo, which means, I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation, it means I see and keep silent. So I have to ask, A, is that a coincidence? And B, talk about the significance of Rosie's silence and how it relates to finding her voice.
I'm going to say I absolutely knew that.
Did you? I love it.
But actually, I think it was a theme throughout, history, particularly in those times, and actually even today. Sometimes you think, actually, words can be like weapons, and we have to be really, it could be more now, actually, if you think about it. Sometimes, the less said, the sooner it's mended, and, words can get us into trouble. And I think that was a real theme. Actually, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Just in case. So, yeah.
And then ultimately, I feel like it did make when Rosie was able to speak up for herself. Because there are some scenes later on in the novel where she really stands up for herself in a way that earlier in the book she wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And by showing early on, I feel like it made those scenes more effective.
Yeah, I think, do you know what, I don't know about you, but I love it in stories when the person that you maybe wasn't at the forefront, they perhaps didn't have the loudest voice, but they come through, you watch their growth and their journey. And what I love about Rosie, she comes up against some real, like me, there is that archetype me girl in there, it's just like, who utterly, she's brilliant in it. But, and also this horrible deputy head that, some of you, some mothers out there might strangely find attractive, right? And that's okay. And but you watch Rosie and to find her redemption, to find her power that she never knew she had. There is a line in this book where she takes her revenge that I wrote probably 9 right at the beginning that has stayed with me. It's one of my favourite lines. It says, I don't want to ruin it for you, but you'll understand when I say, that's not a hole, that's a warning, okay? I don't know if you heard it when she does that. Yeah. Okay, but there's just moments in it where she suddenly bites back. And she's also human. She doesn't behave perfectly. None of us do, which I think is fair.
So while we're talking about characters, I want to talk about my favorite, Charlie. Charlie's my favorite. We talked a little bit about this earlier. I have a real soft spot for soft boy characters. I think that if we had more soft boys in literature, we'd have more softer men in real life, which would be a great thing, I think. So I guess talk about the development of Charlie's character and how was it an intentional thing to say, yes, I want to show a boy in a book who can cry and who can be saved by the female character. Was that an intentional decision for you with Charlie?
The thing is, I always think if you can see it, you can be it, and so we find inspiration and permission through characters, in movies and stories. And Charlie, I would actually say, he's a modern day hero, and he's still strong. He's actually, but he has the strength to show a softness in him, but he's still like that archetype, boy that plays football and, he's...
Soccer.
Yeah, thank you. You've seen that kind of, he is that boy that and he's the good guy. You just watch it, he's underestimated, and you see his arc come through, and you sort of, there are 2 guys in there that you're either going to root Charlie or Jackson. Charlies and Jacksons everywhere in our life, I think.
Indeed. So I'm pretty sure I wouldn't make it out alive if we didn't talk about music.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about music. So I have 2 questions for you. The first is a little more general. I would love to hear the ways that you feel like perhaps music and your years in music prepared you for being an author, things that you learned, things that you went through that when you started writing a book, I know this isn't your first book, but when you go into writing, you're able to draw from those things, or perhaps not. Maybe it's a completely new, different set of skills.
I've always loved writing, and I've always loved music, and they both give me that comfort and the power of words. I'm no Mariah Carey here, and so I've always felt confident in the writing part. But when you write a song, it's like you've got 3 minutes to move you, and it's like perfume. But then with a book, you've got that drawn out. I'm going to hold you for longer and I've got to take you with me. So they both can lean into each other, I think. They both have the same. I always have the same motivation: is to connect with you, to be real. I think it's the most powerful thing is if you can be authentic. Whether it's through song or through book, I want you to feel my heartbeat beating across the pages.
Yeah, The honesty portion is the thing that I'm so drawn to this book in that respect as well, is I can really sense your authentic self kind of coming through in these characters, and that's what makes us love a song, not how perfect it is, but
Yeah.
how human is the song. Because otherwise it's just robot art, and nobody needs or wants robot art. So I would love to ask you about Beautiful Life and Ghost in My House. So how did those songs come about? There's a really nifty QR code in the back of the book. You guys can scan it, and you can go hear these two songs that she wrote to accompany the book. Yeah, they're really they're fantastic. So yeah, talk about the development of those two songs.
I never stopped writing in songs. I always really loved that, and so the song, one was going on hand with the other, and these songs I just felt were so appropriate for the help the reader navigate the story or feel it. And Ghost in the House is just that very upbeat, crunchy, it's very sort of gutsy song it's got a rap in it, it's quite diverse, and it takes you up there, down there, and it's kind of the backdrop. I see it as at 3 a.m. when she first arrives at the school, and she meets Ottilie. Right? Ottilie is just, as I said, it's just an absolute mean girl. She's anyway, so and she shows her into this gallery, and this gallery is like full of these amazing golden queens, and they've got these these beautiful pictures of them, whether it's Queen Elizabeth I or Amelia Earhart or Anne Boleyn, all these Frida Kahlo, all these paintings of alumni that has been to the school at some point in time. Anyway, so Ottilie locks her in, and 3 a.m. she suddenly hears something, and she meets the ghost of Anne Boleyn, which is a theme throughout, and they have this strange relationship throughout the story. So there's the theme of that. And the other one, Beautiful Life, and I wrote that, it's kind of, it's the grown-up song. I don't know if any of you have had to go through, I'm sure each and every one of you have been through something that's difficult in your life, and you're just like, oh my God, when is this going to end? Can I get through it? But what I've learned, whatever the weather is, you get through it, one way or another. And when you do, something within you sort of, a confidence or a gratitude comes, and that you made it. And this song, Beautiful Life, is that song that, do you know what I mean? No matter what happened, I'm still here, and I'm still standing, and I feel good about it. I found out, I tell you what it is, when the poop hits the fan, so to speak, you find out two things. One, who your friends are, and also what you're made of. And think, okay, I did this and I'm all right. And this song, which I'm really proud of, is that I wrote it for that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about process for a minute. Hopefully I won't bore you guys too much. But so there's a quote that I found that said, "Writing is my greatest joy. For me, it's all consuming. I get to play God in total control. Will I live or die, feel pain or fall in love? I can immerse myself entirely." So when I read this, I very much felt like, well, first of all, I get it. I totally understand. And also it feels like there's something about that informs the process of what it is that draws us to sit down and write these stories.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk a little bit about your process and how you go about telling the stories that you tell, and maybe that's even like where you go about telling the stories you tell.
I think storytelling is part of humanity. If you think about on the caveman, they draw these pictures on the wall and say, "This happened to me. I'm expressing it and I'm passing it on." But there's something when you go into that writing space, and everybody's different. And for me, it was a baptism of fire. I really had to learn as I went. But as David said, that when I got into it, you can sort of really immerse yourself, and it's just this amazing feeling. When we live in a world where how much control do we really have? We can't control what that person thinks of you, or what's going to happen, what's the weather, it would go on about it. But when you write a story, you can make anything happen. It's like, hey, it's an amazing feeling, and you can take yourself on adventures that you can say things that you would never dream of saying, and you can inject it healthily through a character. So you can use all that stuff. It's like experiencing life without getting your fingers burned. It's quite good.
That's a great